ScotWeek is a non-profit 501c3 created in Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world. ScotWeek's mission is to celebrate and perpetuate the very special relationship between Scotland and the United States, as well as modern Scottish culture combined with traditional Scottish history. ScotWeek was created to shine a spotlight on Scottish contributions not only in the U.S., but throughout the globe, by highlighting Scotland's rich history of art, music, film and television, business and innovation, travel, food, and drink. As a charity, ScotWeek provides educational and internship opportunities through our partnerships with the Scottish Business Network, Entrepreneurial Scotland, and the Saltire Foundation, all with the support of the Scottish Government. In this series, we'll go behind the scenes of entertainment and industry as we interview our favorite members of the Scottish community. Get a first-hand look at the cultural contributions of the Scottish diaspora and travel with us around the world on an exciting journey to experience all things Scottish.
Hi, I'm Cindi McIntosh.
And I'm Kelsey Deanne.
And this is ScotWeek.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Cindi McIntosh. This is ScotWeek, and we have the most amazing panel this evening. And these are some of my best and dearest friends. And so I'm very honored to have with us this evening Dr. Ken Misch, the drum major, Scott MacDonald, pipe major for the LA Scots Pipe Band, also organizer for the Queen Mary Highland Games, Costa Mesa Highland Games. We have Kyle Dawson, president of New York Tartan Week NYC. So sorry, Kyle. I always get that wrong. It's Tartan Week NYC.
It's National Tartan Day New York Committee or the New York City Tartan Week.
Perfect. And Emma Schiff, who is a Highland dancer, world champion, and has her own dancing school. And so we wanted to talk with you this evening about the Scottish community in the United States and the events that we hold here and kind of how that works. And we have some of the biggest organizers of the country here with us on this panel. So with that, Scott MacDonald, I'd like to ask you how long you've been piping and what got you into piping, playing the pipe.
Well, my father was a bagpiper. My mom and dad immigrated from Winnipeg, Manitoba in the early 50s. And my dad was a piper in the Cameron Highlanders. And so he was a piper and moved to Los Angeles. I was born here. And going back his father was a kilt maker from Stornoway. So there was a kind of in my blood. So I'm not that far removed from Scotland. So my dad mom and dad immigrated to Los Angeles, started participating in the Scottish communities. They moved to Glendale, California, actually. There was a small contingent of pipers and drummers and then that kind of started the whole process. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then you went on from there, I feel like, not only because you became pipe major of this amazing band. I think at one point, if not still, the LA Scots Pipe Band was the only grade 1 band in the continental United States for a time. Is that true?
At the time it was. When I took over, well, my dad started the band in 1961 along with two other gentlemen. And when they started out, that was the year I was born, actually. And so I was old enough to play in the band at that time, but they went along until 1973. The band kind of disbanded. And then when I took over the band in 1991, there was a small band kind of formed, not the LA Scots, but when I decided that it was maybe my time to be pipe major, I changed the name back to the LA Scots and started a game plan. Because there was a lot of talent in Los Angeles at the time. We just couldn't seem to kind of pull it all together. And I felt that maybe it was time for me to give it a try. And within 5 years, we were, with a lot of hard work and a lot of good people with me, we won the World Pipe Band Championships in grade 2 in Scotland. So we in a relatively short time, we went from basically just stuck in Los Angeles, not traveling, not doing much. And then we finally got some financial support because it's not cheap to travel in those days. And we worked our way up and finally won it in 1997. We're upgraded into grade 1 in 98, and we were in grade 1 for many years. And we were the only band in grade 1 for many years. Now we're actually a grade 2 band. And there is 2 grade 1 bands, one in Houston, Texas, and the other one is in Dunedin, Florida. But we won't be long. We'll be back in grade 1 very shortly.
And I know that you will be. And then even furthermore than that, you became the organizer for the Costa Mesa Highland Games, the piping, and as well as Queen Mary.
Yeah, I kind of fell into. At first was the Queen Mary Games. I was running that, in fact, for 25 years until this year was the last games of 2000. So unfortunately with COVID in February, who knew that was going to be the final games of the year? But yeah, I had run the piping and drumming aspect of those games for 25 years. And then a few years ago, Tom Riek from the USS or United Scottish Society asked me to run the piping and drumming events at Costa Mesa, which is one of the largest events in the United States. So yeah, so I got my hand in both of those games, and it's been a lot of fun.
And I know this gentleman sitting next to me is kind of your partner in crime. You organized together a lot of this. And so, Ken, how long have you been a drum major? And what made you decide, at what point in your life did you become a drum major?
Because I needed my head examined. No, I started out actually in junior high school and just drum majoring, actually in the American style drum majoring. And then as time went by, I was a drum major for the University of Colorado, and I became a national champion. And then I went off to medical school and think about it for a while. And I had some friends who were actually in medicine and came over from the UK, and we were sitting around at a bar, and they said, "What do you want to do tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, let's go to the beach." And they said, one of the guys who was Scottish said, "Have you ever been to one of the Scottish games?" And I'm like, "You mean where they throw the telephone pole and things like that?" And so we decided we were going to do it. And it's like the Robert Frost thing, the road not taken. That day I could have gone to the beach and my whole life would have been different. But in essence, we went there, and I was kind of going down the Clan 10 area, just looking for drinks. And I saw a sign that said needed pipers, drummers, and a drum major for a new band. It was the Misty Owl Pipe. And interestingly, that Tom Riek ran, who now runs the United Scottish Society Costa Mesa Games. And they had a drum major mace, and I was with these guys and a little toasted and kind of spun it around, threw it up, and they said, "Show up at the Masonic Temple on Tuesday." And that changed my life. And I started out with them and traveled with them for a while. And I'd seen the LA Scots at a number of the games in Scotland. I thought, oh, that'd be really great. And just never even thought about it. And there was a Highland Games, the World Championships. And I think Misty Owl had won in marching department, which is kind of a booby prize over there. And I kind of think Scott was at a bar or something when I was there. And next thing I know, he was in Las Vegas and asked me to join the LA Scots. So I went from grade 4 to grade 1 overnight, and never looked back. And it's just made a lot of great opportunities and kind of moved on. And from there, I was director of the mass bands at a number of Scottish games. And a friend of mine, Jason Pagu, and I was now I think 5 or 6 time world champion. We started traveling around and doing tattoos and got involved with all sorts of Scottish things. And we developed a drum major mace company, the staffs that we use when we march. And we did that, and it kind of fell apart for a while. And just this last year, we joined one of the oldest militaria companies in the world, Dolman and Narborough, merged our mace company with theirs and moving on. And then of course, COVID happened. We had a little back step, but everything's on track again now. And we're just looking forward to all of us to getting back to the Highland Games and performing again and things. But, my tenure with the LA Scots has been amazing. It opened up every avenue and, travel around the world and performances and gigs. And I became the director of the mass bands and drum major competition in Victoria, Canada, at one of the oldest Highland Games in the world. And I think that one of the pinnacle things was I got to be the senior drum major for Prince Andrew, who is there. And now we know that's kind of all changed, but it was still quite a big honor back then.
And also Seaside Highland Games.
And
I think
Highland
you
Games.
organized quite a few mass bands. You're very good at it. And we're very honored to have Ken Misch on the ScotWeek board. And this is for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because it's been my dream, and I hope that we will do this, have a tattoo in LA at Greystone Mansion. We've been working on that. We were hoping for 2021, and also a parade in Beverly Hills. So hopefully that'll happen, and you'll get to show us all your efforts there. That'll be fun. So with that,
and hopefully the LA Scots will be there. Sorry, Scott. Now he's on the line.
Of course, a little undercut there. And so Emma Schiff, I wanted to go to you next and just get a little bit of information about you. I did interview one of your students earlier today, Sage, and had her on. And she had just started a new kind of a little business to support her dancing, which is amazing. But you're her teacher, and you have been doing Highland dance for how long? When did you start as a Highland dancer?
I started when I was 5, so about 16 years now. It's a bit of a funny story how I started, because it wasn't due to like direct ancestry or anything like that. My mom used to dance, and she's Canadian, but the way she started was just, she went to the park one day and there was a Highland dancing competition going on, and she saw that and thought, that looks like a lot of fun. I want to do it. So she took it up and just started just because it was something she had seen. We do have some Scottish ancestry, but it really was just a coincidence. And then, you know, she moved down to LA and had 2 really energetic twins. And she was like, what can I get them into that'll get rid of all that energy? And she thought, oh, I'll try Highland dancing. And my brother didn't like it, but I stuck with it for life.
How many students do you have at your school?
It's currently I've got 2. It goes up and down, because before COVID, I had a few more. And then once the whole pandemic hit, I mean, understandably, it's hard for little kids to keep that motivation, especially if they haven't started competing yet. And if they only know 1 or 2 dances, it's pretty hard to learn a new one on something like Zoom or FaceTime. So I've still got Sage, and she's in the elite level of competing. And then I have another one who also is competing. And luckily we're back to in-person lessons now, because I just do private lessons. So we've been able to get back on track and like working towards competitions again like we were before.
And not to put you on the spot, but can you tell us about your titles and your awards that you've received?
The highlight of my career was winning the World Championships, and that was in 2016. And I'm a 2-time US champion, Open Canadian champion, 2-time Commonwealth champion. Here in LA, one really cool thing that I got to do was the Music Center. They have a scholarship program for high school students. And when I was a junior in high school, I entered that for the non-classical dance category, and I ended up winning. And that was the first time a Highland dancer had ever won that. And so I got to perform at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. And that was great, because I don't think Highland dancing had ever been brought there. And so that was a really cool thing.
Amazing. The Kyle Dawson, I hope you and I have been sort of joined at the hip since I started this thing called ScotWeek. How are you doing, my friend? How is New York, and how is your organization?
Oh, it's great. New York's wonderful. You know, they're supposedly opening up inside dining and drinking tomorrow, 25% only. But it's like New York's never been more alive, because you go out on the streets and all the bars and the pubs, and people have been to New York City know that there's a lot of bars and pubs in New York City. They all have outdoor dining spaces. So like going down the street looks like one big fair. No matter where you go, there's lit up tents and drinking and people having a good time and eating dinner, and it's great. New York's great.
It's amazing. And I know I've interviewed you before, but can you tell us, for this audience, how long you have been the president of Tartan Week NYC?
I'm going on 4 years now. president for Tartan Week. I was treasurer for a year and then elected president. And they keep asking me to come back.
And you are also a piper.
I am, yeah, not as good as some other people on this call. You yourself included.
No, not at all. I would say Scott. I'll defer to Scott on this one. He's the piper here.
Well, yeah, grade 1 piper. I would, yeah, absolutely.
So Scott,
I just started competing last year. So.
Oh, well, good for you. I can't wait to come and see you do that and be there for Tartan Week next year. Hopefully we're able to hold our events.
Yep, I'm hoping. We've already started planning and moving forward, and hopefully our planning isn't for nothing.
So Scott, I wanted to ask you, I know you travel back and forth between the US and Scotland for piping, maybe other countries as well. How is it different putting on an event or having an event here in the US? How would you see that that's different from maybe in Scotland? How is it different for you?
Well, there is a big difference actually, because in Scotland, typically pipe band competitions or the Highland Games are specific to pipe bands. They really actually don't even do many solo events at most of the games. Much of the bigger Highland Games that the big bands would travel to, they're pretty much just pipe bands throughout the day. Here in the States, we're not just catering to the pipe bands, we have to put on a performance. And we have to cater to the paying guests. Not that there's not attendees in Scotland, but here you are putting all aspects of a Scottish event in 1 or 2 days. So not only do you have pipe bands and solo piping and Highland dancing and athletic events. Ken's favorite event is the whiskey tasting events. And sometimes cars, and then you have the clan tents, and usually there's over 100 clans attending. So organizing a games here in the United States, you have to have a little of something for everyone, including the food and you know, and then also the opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies. It's an all-day event, so there's a lot of planning. It takes, you know, a good year to plan for each of these events for most of the bigger games. And compared to Scotland, again, I can only speak for us, and I've traveled there at least 30 times to compete since I was a teenager. You go, you find your time, you get the band ready, you show up in the morning, you're on at 11, you play your events, and then you go to the beer tent. And you pretty much hang out till the end of the day. So it's a little bit different. And I know there is other games, but primarily the pipe bands and the solo events are separated. So the biggest solo events are usually later in the summer and fall, and the pipe bands are during the summer. So those are the kind of the bigger things. So here we have to entice, there's a lot of competition in the States for different events. We have to entice people that have their heritage and try to get them to come to the games for a weekend. That's the big.
I always find it interesting too, here in the United States versus Scotland, when I go to Highland Games or the field sports, as they are called sometimes. No one wears their tartan over there. You'll still get 20,000 people, but no one's wearing a tartan unless you're a piper or drummer or something like that. Over here in the States, everybody wants a piece of tartan. They all wear it.
Well, I think they're proud of their heritage, and I think with Ancestry.com, in fact, it's funny that now that I got on that, I think it's Ancestry that my wife has put us on. I didn't realize I had so many second, third, and fourth cousins, and so I'm getting ticked from on my computer every day. I got a match from somebody in Stornoway, so it's quite interesting. I've never been to that north in Scotland. I'm always in Glasgow or Edinburgh competing, and never go to the north where all my cousins are. But I think here in the States, when they find out they have Scottish or Irish as well, but they find out they're all in for a while. They want to buy a kilt. They want to feel the experience for the weekend, and then they some take it to a a little bit further, and some just once a year they show up to the games.
Amazing. So Emma, what is it like for you to compete in Scotland versus here in the United States? Do you notice any difference in rules or in participation or how they're conducted?
There's not too many differences when it comes to how the actual competition goes down. When you're, no matter where you are in the world, there's a pretty set standard that's set by our governing body of how it should be. The biggest difference I notice is mainly because when I'm not doing an indoor competition in Scotland, which is on the rare side, it's at an outdoor Highland Games. And the main difference for us, I think for us, especially coming from California, is the weather. Because obviously we have our outdoor games here. I don't ever remember being outdoors dancing at, the Queen Mary or Seaside and it raining. So the first year I went over to Scotland, I was at the Cowell Highland Gathering and it started hailing during one of my dances. And I didn't even realize we were supposed to keep going. I was like, so are we going to stop now? Or, it's hailing. And they were like, no, you keep dancing through this. That's the hardest part for a lot of dancers that go over there is you have to get warmed up and you have to stay warmed up, and it's freezing and rainy and windy, and then it'll be summer 10 minutes later, and then it'll be winter again 10 minutes later. So it's hard for your body to stay warm as a dancer. But that's also what I love about it is, even if it's a really gloomy day here and it rains, which isn't that often, I love it. It reminds me of Scotland. It just makes me feel like Scotland. It makes me want to dance. But the weather is definitely the biggest part. And the games there, it's just a great atmosphere. It's people there, I think, are so friendly. And whenever I meet people in Scotland that you mention that you do Highland dancing, here you get a kind of puzzled look and then an ask like, oh, you do river dance? And there are people, especially when you're a foreigner and they're like, you're from America and you do Highland dancing, they're really excited and they think it's really cool. So it's definitely a different experience going over there, but I love the games over there.
That's truly amazing. So Kyle, I know that you and I are trying to do something similar to what you're doing in New York, but on the West Coast. Have you been to any events like what you do there in New York City, anywhere else in Scotland or anywhere else in the world for that matter?
No. The only thing that comes close to, per se, a Tartan Day celebration, New York City is the biggest Tartan Day celebration in America. There's a couple little celebrations that happen. DC does something really small, but they don't do a parade. Nowhere else does a parade. Some other people do like a little party or a small a small style games, but it's very, very small. The biggest thing I've been to that's similar to what Tartan Week is would be in Edinburgh when they do the Pipe Fest in Edinburgh, where they have like the million pipers marching down the main drag there.
The Royal Mile.
Yeah, I haven't seen any major parades that celebrate Scottish heritage. But I've been to a lot of games. I go to Canada, Fergus, and Montreal, and New Hampshire games, and Stone Mountain games, and Long Island games. And haven't been down to Grandfather Mountain yet. I'm going to get down there. And actually, I'm going to get out to California for you guys, obviously.
Yeah, that'd be fun. So everyone always asks me, did Sir Sean Connery actually start Tartan Week NYC?
He did not. He actually had nothing to do with starting Tartan Week. Sean Connery was the Grand Marshal in 2002.
And what Grand Marshals have you had since then?
Oh, a lot. Famous-wise, we've had Alan Cumming, Kevin McKidd, Brian Cox, Graham McTavish, Sean Connery, 2002, Sam Hewen, Tommy Flanagan, KT Tunstall, Billy Connolly, Billy Connolly was fantastic. He was great. So was KT. KT was awesome. Everyone's great. All the Grand Marshals are awesome. They all love it. They don't realize what it is until they get here and then get put into the situation and on the street and with all the crowds, and they're usually pretty much blown away by what's going on.
I'm sure. And I know this one sitting next to me could be a Grand Marshal if you ever need one.
Well, he's been in the parade already. Him and Jason. him and Jason led the mass band. What was it? 2015, right?
We've done two actually, but it was an experience. I
Yeah.
think we've been in parades all around the world and things, but it was absolutely amazing. I think it's the avenue. Is it the Avenue of the Stars you marched down, or was it Fifth Avenue?
It's Sixth Avenue. Sixth Avenue. Yeah.
It was close, but you show up there and there's just bands everywhere and everybody's directing you, and then it's just this massive parade, and you go down, and the parade's fun, but it's what happens afterwards. All the pipe bands, they spread out through the city in Manhattan, and you go to all of these bars and you march in, and people give you drinks and they're cheering and everybody's in their kilts, and it's just an amazing kind of thing, and it's just so fun. And then usually after you've kind of done the big tour, huge mobs of pipe bands get together, and then they play in the street for a while, and then later that night you go to a big Kelly, and usually there's amazing talent and things. It's just incredible. And one of the years I know we had a military sort of tattoo, but indoors and performance, and we did this whole thing in a theater, and it was just great. There were bands from Scotland and America, and then we had military bands and things like that. And we did a whole kind of stage performance, and it was just one of the greatest experiences, that I've had. And, I kind of owe it to really to the LA Scots that I got to, have the ability to be seen and be asked to do something like that. And, it's happened over and over, and we've gone 2 times. And I know the last time we led the pipe band of all the people that weren't really affiliated with the pipe band. So there were hundreds of people in this group, and Jason and I were going down the street, and the Mesas were spinning, and it was just an amazing experience. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember that parade. I like to say with the Tartan Day parade, based on, like with bands, and the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City and their bands. New York City has more pipe bands per marchers than St. Patrick's Day's parade in New York City. You have St. Patrick's Day, something like 70 blocks long. It's a 6-hour parade, St. Patrick's Day in New York City. And they had, I think, 60,000 marchers last year. Not the year before, 2019. They had something like 60,000 marchers, and they had 66 pipe bands. Tartan Week in 2019, we had 3,000 marchers, and we had 32 pipe bands out of 3,000 marchers. It was pretty much a group, a pipe band, a group, a pipe band, a group, a pipe band. It just walking up the street in 44th and 45th Street where we do our staging, it's just filled with pipe bands.
Sounds incredible. And I wanted to just ask you, Ken, before we move on to the next question for everyone, your experience overseas, because I think, over the years that I've known you, some 20 years, I run into Ken Misch all over the world, different countries, especially in Scotland, not planned. And so I know you're overseas a lot, attending events for Scottish different events. What is your experience versus in the United States?
Well, I think at least in our world, the pipe band world and drum majoring world, that Scotland's kind of the font of the art and things like that. And yet it's been brought to the United States. And I think because people here are one step removed, they're actually seek more and they're closer to it. And they wear, kind of what you said at the games, we go ours, everybody's wearing their kilts. because it's not something that's around them every single day. And, just a very funny, brief story, every year when we go to the Worlds, there's a bar, famous bar, the Park Bar, and we all party there afterwards. And it's just a lot of fun. But I was invited to lead a thing for Hogmanay a few years ago, and at I think it was the Scotsman at the Balmoral Hotel or something. But I thought I'd go down and see my friend Winnie, who's the owner at the Park Bar, and I walked in there, and it was completely different without all the pipe band people in there. And I, sat at the bar, and there was a guy sitting next to me, and I started talking, and he goes, "Oh, you're from America?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "So what brings you to this bar? Because it's kind of a local bar." And I said, "No, this is the pipe band bar. This is where we all go." And he goes, "You're in a pipe band?" He goes, looks right at me, he goes, why would you do that?" And I'm like, I said, no, it's amazing. And he goes, "So you own like a kilt?" And I said, "Well, I have a million kilts and things like that." He goes, "That's amazing." And he, started talking to me, and I kind of realized that over there, because there's this stuff going on all the time, especially the Highland Games, they're mostly for the people who are in the pipe band and dancing and athletics, but it's not the global thing that we make here. And I think Scott kind of alluded to it, that when we come to these games and we do these, it's got to be more than just the pipe band. So we have rock bands, and we have people with, flying hawks and sheep herding and all the various cultural events that happen in Scotland, because people here really seek it. They're the diaspora. They want to be attached. And to some reason, because we're not seeing it every day, it becomes so important for people to come. And it's just like when we do the mass bands and things, and you're in Scotland, it's just kind of like the end of the day, and all the bands walk out on the field and they waiting for the trophies. It gets over, and then you're on to the next thing. But where we are, those opening performances and the mass bands, things that we do, they're actually staged performances. You plan them out, and the Marine Corps band will come on. We have Highland dancers and people singing, and it's just a completely different thing. I'm not saying one's better or worse, but I think when we do it, it's just much more of a performance, because we have to appeal to many more people that may not really know everything about a Highland Games, because a lot of people are coming just because it's a really fun event. But I can tell you that most of the people who come, even if they didn't know a lot about their culture, or their first time and they have no Scottish connection, they come to these things and they want to go back, because there's so many facets with the rock bands and the whiskey pub and the various things. So I think we create a much bigger show. It's not centered just around the competitors. It's centered around making an event for the entire community. And it's really fun. And we do spend a lot of time doing it. And I don't know any other performers in the world that can put on a show with sometimes 500 to even 1,000 performers on a weekend who haven't rehearsed together. They just know what they have to do, and they follow their pipe major and their drum major. And at the end, it looks like something you practice for weeks, and the Marine Corps band will roll out, and the LA Scots, and other bands and things like that. So these things are an incredible performance with very little rehearsal, and it just comes together. And it speaks to the quality of the musicians in the United States, the people who learn from the people in Scotland, and just try to add our own little flavor to it. And I think they're both amazing. And when you go over to Scotland and you're a pipe band, you feel like you're at the place where it all began. So it's very exciting for people who are here to go over there and show them what we've learned and we've got, and that we've made an impact on their world and our world.
Very well said. And I think too, what I see here in the States especially, we're so inclusive, especially in the pipe bands. I mean, I feel like you can look across the mass bands at any given moment in time, and you're going to see every walk of life, a person from every walk of life, every age, probably every country represented in most of our mass band groups. And I'm very proud of that, the diversity that we have. And we're just very, I feel like, open and welcome to whoever wants to come and participate. There's so many people that we know that don't have any Scottish heritage that like to take part in what it is that we do here. And so with that, I just want to kind of ask the final question or opinions of how you've all been sort of coping during this pandemic in terms of, we haven't been able to get together, we haven't been able to hold our events, we haven't been able to compete. It's so different, and how we've been, getting through this period of time. And more importantly, I feel like, what do you see moving forward will change, if anything? Do you think we'll get back to a normal, or what was normal eventually? Or do you think things, and I want to ask this of you, Scott, because just being a piper myself and having, to go through the whole pipe band thing, we're not together anymore. It's really difficult to hold rehearsals on Zoom, and people have to be very into wanting to practice at home and do what they need to do with their own, but you're not with your pipe band. How do you think things might change, and do you think we will get back to what we consider to be normal eventually?
Okay, there's about 4 questions in there, or 5.
Oh, sorry.
So let me address the first one. Is I'm very attuned of what's going on around the world. I speak to Scotland every week. I'm aware what's happening with the Highland Games, the administration over in Scotland, and how they're coping with it. And quite honestly, it's probably not that positive as of today. I wouldn't be surprised if the season was canceled, to be honest, over in Scotland. So that's a bleak kind of that's one option. I mean, we're planning multiple different areas. The different parts of the world are hit differently with COVID. Right now, I think the UK is hit pretty hard, what I hear, and they're adjusting. But bagpipes are kind of an interesting instrument, and it's out in the blowing of the instrument. I've been reading articles. Some of it may be controversial either way on either side of it, but it's hard to wear a mask and play bagpipes. So that's going to be a challenge. But I don't see the games starting even over here. I know there's been several cancellations in the U.S. through March, April. I don't believe the Queen Mary Games in February are going to be open. In fact, the Schiff is closed down. And so I don't expect it to, unless something happens dramatically over the next couple of months. So I don't think there'll be the first time in, it'll be the 26 years that we haven't had a Scottish festival on that weekend at the Queen Mary. Now, maybe a smaller games. I believe there will be some smaller individual games that maybe there's piping events and spread out and doing that. That's probably short-term best situation. As far as the pipe band and practicing, we have not been practicing. We've been adjusting our music. We've been communicating with the band, trying to keep them upbeat. It's very difficult. Emma mentioned how it is hard for the dancers. It's really difficult when you're competing against so many outside influences. I know many pipers and drummers that are getting along in their age like me. I am talking to a lot of people in Scotland. A lot of them are hanging it up, and it's very unfortunate. I think we're in a very, very trying times as far as pipe bands and the instrument. And I think the longer it goes, the more difficult it is to get people back and up and running. I mean, last year was a very positive year. The games attendances were up. Everybody was pretty positive. The musicians, bands were better than ever. And then this hits, and then what happens is you don't play your instrument for 4 months. It's not easy to pick it up and just play. Same with drumming or dancing or putting on games. I mean, the liability, everybody's concerned about everybody's health. So the short term, I'm pessimistic. Long term, I know that there'll be an adjustment in the pipe bands. I don't think there'll be as many. I think there'll be fewer pipe bands internationally. I think there'll be fewer games. So I'm when I talk to folks and I talk to them, they go, well, that doesn't sound very positive. And I'm a pretty positive person, but I think that the support from the Scottish community is going to be needed more than ever. And the support of games. We're a very strong pipe band organization. We're going to survive. But some of the family bands, some of the smaller bands, some of the bands that don't have access to as much talent. And when I say talent, I mean, there's not tons of bagpipers and drummers falling off the trees in Los Angeles, for example, but we're a very strong band, a big band, and we're going to survive this. But I already know of a number of bands in the area that are probably not going to make it, and for several reasons. Either they're getting older, they're moving on, they just don't want to deal with it until we get going again as a community. So I think the Scottish community itself here in the States or in Scotland or Canada, again, I have family in Canada, and the Canadian, I'm sure Canada's, you can't even get into Canada and back to the States right now. So I'm optimistic that maybe summertime next year, I'm hoping Costa Mesa will be the first games. I've kind of got my sight on that. I'd love to be the first games to host a pipe band and get the games. And so I think that it's going to be at least then from the piping side of it. And that will be same with Emma, because she's here in my backyard for the dancing. And then the last part of it is, what are we doing as a band and how are we going to move forward? We are actually going to start having some Zoom band practices, which I'm not a big fan of, but at least you see them. But we're going to try to get together next month outside. It's been hard to locate a facility for us to be outside, spaced, make sure everybody's comfortable. So we're going to give it a go. I've done a lot of research on it. Ken's been helpful. And I've been seeing what the bands in Scotland, you're starting to see bands kind of get together. But I think we'll probably play at my golf club, basically, is where we'll play at. That's, as you can see, golf is thriving as an outdoor sport. Anything indoors is not doing so well. So we'll probably play outside. We'll see how everybody's attitudes are and make sure their health is addressed, and then we'll see how we move forward. But we're trying to get together. I would say that if you were to ask, we're a band of about 40 people. I would say that temperature reading on the band, and it's probably in most bands, about 30%, or I'd say about 75% of the band is actively wanting to get back together. And probably 25% are, maybe have parents that are older or have friends that could be compromised. But I would say a good 75% of the band wants to get together, wants to get back playing safely, but they're itching to get going. So that's positive. But we'll just have to adapt and see what 2021 brings us.
Well, we look forward to watching you guys. And if you do get together and you're able to send us over some footage of that, I think that would be very encouraging if everyone was down for being filmed a little bit. It would be very encouraging for other pipe bands and other pipers maybe to be able to see that, because I think that people are feeling it right now and getting a little depressed about the situation. And
we will. And I can also take pictures of Ken twirling his mace. That's easy. We can get that. But we'd be more than happy to do that. We'll make sure we're out there in space. We don't want to get anybody in trouble, so we'll make sure that we send it out. But I have been seeing on the internet pipe bands are getting back together, and you're right. I think I'm looking forward to getting the band together. They're my friends. I mean, I've done this my whole life. I've been playing pipes for 50 years, running a band. I live for going to band practice, and I love to compete. And not having that, the only thing it's done is it's made my golf game better. That's it. That's the only thing that's better. But I miss everybody, and I want to get back out on the field. And I really miss going to Scotland this year. So I can't wait to get back there.
I know, I agree. This first time in 22 years, I haven't been to Scotland this time of year.
Yeah.
I believe I get that. Emma, how about yourself? How are you? How are you feeling about the dancing? Do you talk to a lot of other dancers? What's going on in the dance world, and what do you think is going to happen moving forward?
We're a bit luckier because it was difficult when the pandemic started teaching over FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, whatever, but it's certainly a lot easier than doing a whole pipe band practice. So that was the good part. It is definitely doable. So luckily I was able to start teaching in-person classes about a month ago because I only do privates, because I only have a couple students. So they would come one at a time, and then I teach in my garage, and I always teach with my garage open anyways. So it's basically outdoors, and I have it like teaching chair that I would push back into my driveway. And so I'd be wearing a mask out in my driveway, and they'd be, 10, 15 feet away on the board. So it's actually been working out really well. We've been able to do really safe lessons in person for about a month now. As far as actual competitions go, it's just really hard to say. I'm kind of with Scott. I don't see Highland Games happening. I don't see things on such a huge scale like a Highland Games happening until there's a vaccine. So I don't see, something like Queen Mary happening. As for if just a competition, I think that's a bit of a different story because you can do it outdoor. Our governing body, Scott Dance USA, has released guidelines for coming back to competitions, and it's not to be used now, it's to be used when you are able to safely do it and your state guidelines allow for it. But it probably would be a lot sooner we'd be able to do a competitions than, we could do a Highland Games, because at a competition now, it's limited attendance. It would not be open for viewing. It would be the parent and the dancer, not even like siblings. And, everyone wears a mask and you're outdoors. And they've actually taken out one of the dances we do because we need to link arms and turn with each other. They've said we can't do that dance until, it's safe again. So they're making modifications. So I don't see any huge Highland Games. I don't see us going back to competitions the way we used to know them for a little bit, but I think hopefully next year we will see some form of competition. And, even if it looks different, and obviously that's not the ideal way, it is a social thing as well as the competing part. I think at least being able to get the kids up on the boards, even if it's not able to be that big social party that we all like it to be, I think that's still really motivating. And, for a lot of dancers, it is about the competition too. So people that were missing that, I think that'll be really helpful. And then hopefully, once we have a vaccine and we're all kind of back to normal, because that will happen, eventually, then, we'll get to do our big Scotland trips and our big US championships and all that good stuff. But my dancers that I still have been staying really motivated, actually, and having this time off, we've been able to just do fun stuff. You don't have a competition always coming up. So we've just been learning fun steps and doing choreographies on top of our regular practicing just because we can. And I think a lot of dance friends that I know and other dance teachers have been doing that as well. So
amazing. Well, thanks for doing that. And I hope that when we finish up here, you can let everyone know where to find you, and especially if there are some dancers out there that would like to have some lessons or to try out Highland Dance.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Bless you.
We can cut that, don't worry.
It's
COVID.
just allergies. I knew someone was going to say that.
What can I tell you?
No.
Anyway.
It's the
If
doc.
only I hadn't heard that every time I've sneezed in the past 6 months.
And so, Kyle, this all kind of sounds dreary for you and I, because our events are scheduled for April, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure at this point. Are we or are we not going to be able to hold them?
I mean, realistically, I don't know that I see it happening, but optimistically, I'm continuing to plan as if it is going to happen, just so that I don't have to run around like an idiot if things do clear up and we are able to move forward. But yeah, I'm about 50% on the fence that it's not going to happen or it's going to happen.
And if people want to find you and your organization, I just kind of want to go around the circle here, because we would all love to follow all of you and your stories and see how you're doing and check back in with you and see how everything's going. But how can we follow you, Kyle, and Tartan Week NYC?
NYC Tartan Week is Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's all NYC Tartan Week. Website is nyctartanweek.org.
Amazing. And Scott, how can we follow you and the band and everything that you're doing for Costa Mesa?
Well, we're pretty easy to find. We got lots of YouTube stuff. You can just look up Los Angeles Scottish Pipe Band or LA Scots Pipe Band. Either of those. We do have a website and Facebook, and we're pretty active on social media, even when we're in downtime. So we're trying to make sure everybody knows what we're up to. We're going to be getting active, like I mentioned, probably next month. So we'll be posting a lot of clips of what's happening. Our young players in the band, I will say, are competing in these virtual competitions, world pipe band or world solo piping and drumming competitions. So we've got a couple of kids in the band. Connor Eckert and Brendan Foley are tearing it up. They're doing a great job. They're 14 and 15-year-old boys in the band, and they're becoming great young players and competing. So they're the most active part of our band, and you can follow them as well. But we'll be up and running. It's easy to find us, and like I mentioned, we're gonna weather this, and we'll be stronger at the end of it. I hope the other bands are as lucky as I think we're gonna be, so we can have big Highland Games in the future. So that's. And again, if we can pull off the games, we'll do it. But I would say that probably mid-year next year is the best bet at this point.
Emma, how about yourself? How can people find you and follow you or sign up for lessons for Highland dancing?
You can find me on Instagram at Emma Schiff Highland. Facebook is Schiff School of Highland Dance, and my website is schiffhighland.com, and there's a link to email me and sign up for lessons there.
Amazing. How about you, Ken?
Well, I'm always on Facebook, and obviously associated with the LA Scots and also the Emerald Society of Las Vegas Pipe Band, and then of course our newest company, Dahlman Narborough Regimental Mace. I didn't really say too much about the whole COVID thing, but as a physician, I think I have a unique perspective on how I think things are going to happen. I would say that the pipe band and the Scottish culture has survived a lot of things over the centuries. And I always believe that art always trumps politicians, always, and that it goes on. And I think that the culture and the pipe band world especially will move beyond this. And I think my sense, a lot of being out there, is that people really want to get back to where they were. And, it might be a bit different, but I think people are aching to see their culture again and see the dancing and the athletics and the big parade in New York and all of that type of thing. And I think when the time is right and it's safe, we'll be back, and we might be back even stronger, because I think in the end of all of this, it as always is, it's survival of the fittest. And if you look at pipe bands or piping, it's had adversity all along. The clan system was decimated in Scotland many, many years ago, and it came back stronger. And, there's a song and it says, "The pipes still call the old ancient clans," and we'll be there for them. And I can tell you, unlike some of the bands with the police pipe band, we've still found our place even during this pandemic when we've had some unfortunate events with the police. We've still been called out and wore our masks until the minute we went on performance to, send them off to heaven. And, there's a saying that the pipes send the men to battle and their souls to heaven. And I think we're still fulfilling our duty and our job to the community. And I think that will be remembered. And when things open up again, and I think that a lot of the stuff that's going on right now is unfortunately not based in science, but in hysteria. And I think it will move. I think there's a pendulum in the world. And I think that, this isn't really over for us. I think it's just a new beginning. And they say as one door closes, another one opens. And perhaps we might even be stronger after this because we want it more when it's been taken away. And so I feel that it's going to be a while before we all get back to where we were. I think we're going to get back, and I actually think it might be even better than before because we want it more.
I have to agree. I have to keep that hope alive as well. And we're just so grateful to have you all join us here and for all of your time this evening. As I said, you're some of my very best friends and I adore all of you, but I want to thank you for being on for ScotWeek and for Scottish International Week and the Scottish Business Network. Thank you for joining us. And of course, as always, ScotWeek.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and you can find all of our social media platforms through our website. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.